Sarah, my coworker, had accidentally placed the wrong price tags on some power drills. Sarah, are you completely incompetent, or do you just enjoy wasting my time?
I'm sorry, sir, but I followed the directions on how to set up the display to the letter.
No, you didn't. The display looks terrible. She stammered, trying to explain, but it didn't matter. Dave suddenly shoved her so hard that she stumbled and fell, scattering some items that had been placed on the floor, creating a huge mess. However, Dave demanded that she clean up the mess she had made, and then berated her with a barrage of insults, calling her a lazy and incompetent fool. That was Dave. He didn't care if he hurt you. In fact, I think he rather enjoyed hurting people. I think it gave him pleasure to know that he intimidated other people, and that he felt powerful, knowing others would walk on eggshells when he was around to avoid his wrath. My name is Sam, and I always thought of myself as a decent person. A person who avoided trouble, stayed out of drama, and minded their own business. That all changed during the year I worked at Cedarville Hardware, under the watch of the worst boss imaginable, Dave McDonald. Dave wasn't just a bad boss, he was a bully. He didn't just run the store, he terrorized it. From the moment you walked in, the air was thick with tension. You'd never know what would set him off. A shipment arriving 5 minutes late, an employee not folding a display the exact way he liked, or someone forgetting to clock out for lunch. At first, I thought I could handle it. After all, how bad could it really be? It wasn't like I hadn't worked for difficult bosses before. But boy, did I underestimate just how terrible Dave really could be. I remember the first time I saw his temper in full force. It was a Tuesday morning, right before the store opened. Sarah, my coworker, had accidentally placed the wrong price tags on some power drills. Sarah, are you completely incompetent, or do you just enjoy wasting my time?
I'm sorry, sir, but I followed the directions on how to set up the display to the letter.
No, you didn't. The display looks terrible. She stammered, trying to explain, but it didn't matter. Dave suddenly shoved her so hard that she stumbled and fell, scattering some items that had been placed on the floor, creating a huge mess. However, Dave demanded that she clean up the mess she had made, and then berated her with a barrage of insults, calling her a lazy and incompetent fool. That was Dave. He didn't care if he hurt you. In fact, I think he rather enjoyed hurting people. I think it gave him pleasure to know that he intimidated other people, and that he felt powerful, knowing others would walk on eggshells when he was around to avoid his wrath. It wasn't long before I became a target, too. One morning, I was reorganizing the aisle of cleaning supplies when Dave stormed in, his face red and twisted with rage. Sam, how hard is it to line up bottles? Look at this mess. Customers will think we're a joke. I looked at the shelves. They seemed fine to me. Everything was straight, the labels were forward, but that didn't matter. He grabbed a bottle from the shelf and threw it towards me. I ducked, and the bottle hit the wall behind me. If you can't do a basic task, why are you even here? But everything looks the way it should. Are you blind too? Redo this entire aisle, and if I come back and see it done incorrectly, then I will dock your pay. Now stop being an idiot and do your job right. I stared at him, too shocked to respond. When he finally stormed off, muttering to himself, I breathed a sigh of relief, but almost broke down in tears. After he left, Sarah came over.
Don't take it personally. He's like this with everyone.
Yeah, but he shouldn't be. That's no way for a boss to behave.
You're right, but what can we do? We all need this job.
Sarah was right about us all needing our jobs, but that didn't make it better. If anything, it made it worse, because it meant we had to put up with Dave's abusive behavior or become unemployed. The breaking point came during inventory day, the most dreaded day of the month. Dave was already in a foul mood, stomping around the store and barking orders. He cornered Greg, one of our newer hires, in the storage room. Greg was a nice guy, but he wasn't exactly detail-oriented. He'd miscounted some items, and Dave went ballistic. Greg, are you trying to sabotage this store? Do you even understand numbers? How stupid can you be? This is the first time I've ever done this job. I promise that I'll do better in the future, though. You incompetent oaf. You damn well better do better or I'll fire your ass. Now get back to work. Greg stood there, frozen, as Dave grabbed a bottle and slammed it onto the table so hard it snapped in half. He then raised his fist and cocked it back, threatening to punch Greg in the face, and held it there for a few seconds. We could tell that he was contemplating hitting Greg, but in the end he didn't, and he just stormed off. That night, as we closed up, the staff gathered in the break room. The air was heavy with frustration and fear.
He's out of control.
We have to do something. This isn't just about bad management anymore. It's dangerous. One of these days, he's going to hurt someone. How many times has he smashed objects and nearly hurt people while doing so? What if we record him? Show people what he's really like?
And do what with that recording?
We could post it to social media. People love watching such content, and it could very quickly help us out. People would complain to the owners about his behavior. Plus, Dave wouldn't know who did it, and so he couldn't lash out at us if it doesn't work. But it might get him in enough trouble with the owners that he gets fired and replaced. Everyone liked the idea, and so we all agreed upon a plan. It started small. We set up our phones discreetly whenever Dave went on one of his rants. It wasn't hard. He provided plenty of material. Within a week, we had hours of footage, Dave throwing objects, screaming at employees, and even threatening to fire people for things that weren't their fault. But it wasn't enough to just record him. We needed a plan. Step 1. Keep him on edge. We started making small mistakes on purpose, mislabeling items, taking extra long breaks, and forgetting to refill stock. Each time he exploded, and each time we recorded. Step 2. Collect evidence from former employees. Sarah reached out to people who had quit, and it turned out we weren't the first ones to deal with Dave's reign of terror. They had stories, too, about broken shelves, destroyed merchandise, and shattered confidence. Step 3. Leak everything. We posted everything we had to every social media site we could think of under anonymous accounts. The day we went public with the footage and stories was both terrifying and exhilarating. Within hours, it went viral, getting thousands of likes, shares, and comments. Dave had become famous for the wrong reasons. People were outraged. Customers started boycotting the store, or they would come in and start arguments with Dave, and the corporate office was flooded with complaints. News outlets picked up the story, calling Dave the worst boss in America. Reporters even began to show up and try to interview him.
So Dave, is it true you are abusive to your employees?
These people are just lazy. They're trying to ruin me because I demand excellence.
Do you become violent sometimes?
Of course not. I am a very calm man.
While he was talking to a reporter, a new intern suddenly passed behind him, answering a call and speaking a little loudly. I think the intern had an emergency call about her sick daughter, but Dave became furious, completely forgetting that he was trying to clear his name and was on camera. He turned and started berating the woman.
Why are you answering calls during working hours and making so much noise? Are you stupid or something?
Sir, my daughter is sick, and I got a call from her school.
Shut up, I don't care if she dies. Drop that call and get back to work.
Then Dave suddenly came back to his senses and realized he was actually granting an interview. Just then he rushed to his office and locked the door. But the evidence was overwhelming. When corporate finally stepped in, it was like watching a storm hit. 2 representatives showed up unannounced, armed with laptops and clipboards. They reviewed the footage, interviewed the staff, and inspected the store. Some of the former employees that we had spoken to told us that representatives from corporate had even reached out to them to ask them about Dave. They were only too eager to divulge everything that he had put them through. By the end of the day, Dave was called into the office. We all gathered near the break room, pretending to work, but straining to hear every word.
Dave, we've reviewed the evidence, and your behavior is unacceptable. Effective immediately, you're terminated.
For a moment, there was silence. Then we heard the crash, a chair hitting the wall.
You can't fire me. I built this store. You're all spineless cowards. Without me, this place would crumble to the ground.
Security had to drag him out kicking and screaming, but only after he assaulted them. One security officer had a split lip, and the other had a black eye. As he left, he pointed at us, his face red with fury, and covered in blood from his busted nose. The guards had apparently been forced to punch him in the face repeatedly in order to subdue him.
This isn't over. You'll all pay for this.
The aftermath was surreal. Dave was gone, but his presence lingered like a bad smell. Corporate sent in a new manager, Kendra, who was the exact opposite of Dave. Kind, patient, and understanding. She held a meeting on her first day and assured us things would be different.
I know you've been through a lot, but I'm here to help. Let's rebuild together.
What about Dave, though?
Dave was let go, and if he steps foot anywhere near the store, he will be charged with trespassing. If anyone sees him, they are to report it to me immediately. The company takes what he did very seriously. In fact, they are working on a means of compensation for everyone at this store. It doesn't make up for what you all went through, but it's a way for the company to apologize for not firing him sooner.
For the first time in months, we felt hopeful. As for Dave, his story didn't end quietly. He tried to sue the company for wrongful termination, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. Evidence of his insane behavior was all over the internet, and the courts disagreed with his claims of wrongful termination. The lawsuit was thrown out, and he became a local pariah. Out of frustration, Dave went to a hardware store at night and started destroying windows and anything he could access. A guard saw him and tried to stop him, but they got into a physical altercation. Dave ended up attacking the guard so badly that the police were called. The last I heard, he was sentenced to over 1,000 hours of community service for assaulting the security guard. Eventually, he moved to another state, trying to start over, but his reputation followed him, and he struggled to find work. The last I heard, he had been forced to take a job working at a fast food restaurant as he was desperate for money. Meanwhile, life at Cedarville Hardware improved drastically. With Kendra at the helm, the store became a place we actually wanted to work. In fact, it became a place that we bragged about working at and felt pride as well. It took the company a couple of months, but just as Kendra had promised, they did take what Dave had done serious. As compensation, every employee, both those that still worked at the store and those that had left because of Dave, were given $1,500, and those of us that still worked there got 2 weeks off paid vacation to be taken whenever we wanted. Looking back, I'm proud of what we did. It wasn't easy, but standing up to Dave was the right thing to do, because no one deserves to work under a boss like that. Thanks for watching. While my own accomplishments were often overshadowed and overlooked. James, why can't you be more like Ella? Look at her making us proud. I'm disappointed in you. Every time I made a mistake, or even stumbled through a spelling test, my father would lament about how much of a dumbass I was. Ella always seemed to be floating in her greatness. One day, Ella stole Mom's car and went for a ride. She had a minor accident and broke the car's front light. When our parents returned, she pretended to be ill and told them that I had taken the car for a joyride. Without hesitation, Dad slapped me and grounded me for a week. From then on, I was given most of the chores at home, like mowing the lawn and cleaning, while Ella would be on her phone, chatting with her friends. As the years passed, our relationship shifted from sibling friendship to a fierce rivalry. From the day Ella was born, my world began to revolve around her, and I quickly realized I was in for a lifetime of competition. My name's James, and this is my story. As a child, I didn't fully understand it, but my parents made it clear that my little sister was their golden child. Even as infants, they would snap countless pictures of her, while I lingered quietly in the background, feeling like a ghost in my own home.
Look at her smile. Isn't she the cutest thing?
I didn't ask for much. All I wanted was just a little acknowledgement, a pat on the back, but that seemed to be reserved solely for Ella. It was like living in the shadow of a bright light, and as we grew older, that shadow only got bigger. In elementary school, Ella quickly became known as a genius. My parents made sure she was in the same class as me. She learned to read before most of our classmates and picked up musical instruments with a skill that astonished everyone. My parents paraded her achievements around, boasting to friends and family, while my own accomplishments were often overshadowed and overlooked. James, why can't you be more like Ella? Look at her making us proud. I'm disappointed in you. Every time I made a mistake, or even stumbled through a spelling test, my father would lament about how much of a dumbass I was. Ella always seemed to be floating in her greatness. One day, Ella stole Mom's car and went for a ride. She had a minor accident and broke the car's front light. When our parents returned, she pretended to be ill and told them that I had taken the car for a joyride. Without hesitation, Dad slapped me and grounded me for a week. From then on, I was given most of the chores at home, like mowing the lawn and cleaning, while Ella would be on her phone, chatting with her friends. As the years passed, Our relationship shifted from sibling friendship to a fierce rivalry. Every school play, art competition, and academic challenge morphed into a battleground. Ella was always watching and waiting for the moment to one-up me. It became a constant game of one-upmanship that I never signed up for. One day, I announced that I was going to be the school's president. I was proud of my decision to run, and hoped my parents would be too. However, the reverse was the case.
Oh, that's nice, James. But you know Ella would make a great president too, don't you?
Her words felt like a slap to my face. It didn't matter that I had a good chance. Ella had somehow managed to try to steal the spotlight yet again. Sure enough, she signed up to run against me, launching her own campaign filled with slogans and promises that seemed to outshine my own. I cried my eyes out because I knew she'd win. Ella had a knack for manipulating situations to her advantage. I remember vividly the time I was selected for a special science project. I poured my heart into it, working tirelessly, only to find Ella showing up with a more elaborate display on the day of the fair. Well, despite the situation, I managed to maintain decent grades and keep my head above water. But as we entered senior high school, the favoritism towards Ella grew stronger. She became the star athlete, leading her teams to victory, while my modest accomplishments felt less and less significant in comparison. Family gatherings became unbearable. My parents gushed over her athletic achievements, celebrating every win while I sat quietly, pretending not to notice. I wanted to shout, to demand attention, but it felt futile.
Did you see Ella score the winning goal last week? What a star! She's my true blood, always winning.
She's my true blood too.
Everyone laughed at their little argument. Ella thrived on the attention, soaking up every bit of praise like a sponge. It felt as though no matter what I did, I would always remain in her shadow. The competition became my new normal. Every day felt like a fight for validation and recognition. As college approached, I clung to the hope that I could finally break free from the cycle of rivalry. I pursued a degree in political science, dreaming of a career in public service where I could make a real difference. But of course, Ella had her own plans. She went for the same degree and announced her intentions to run for local office immediately after I did.
Oh, James, maybe you should just let Ella take this one. She has a real talent for this. You know it suits her more than you. Oh dear, I can't even understand why you went for politics.
It felt suffocating. Our political ambitions clashed in a way that was both expected and shocking. Ella and I began campaigning for the same position. The stakes felt higher than ever. I poured my heart into my campaign with a determination I had never known before, hoping to outshine her once and for all. Ella, however, was not one to back down easily. She unleashed a ruthless side I had never seen before. She spread rumors about my character, claiming I was dishonest and untrustworthy.
What kind of person does that? She's so desperate to beat you. Is she even your true sister? That's definitely not how a real sister behaves. She's so unfair.
No matter how hard I fought back, Ella continued her onslaught. She had our parents behind her, cheering her on and fueling her fire. It felt like the entire family had turned against me, leaving me to fight alone in a battle I had never wanted. Despite the obstacles, I refused to give up. I hosted community events, engaged with voters, and made it clear that I was committed to making real change in our town. But Ella's dark tactics reached new heights. One day, I discovered her plan to sabotage my fundraising event. I had spent weeks organizing it, and when I showed up, I found my supplies destroyed and my guests turned away. Ella stood at the entrance, smirking as she reveled in my failure. Did you do this?
Who, me? Why would you ask me that? I just came to support the community and my lovely elder brother.
It was such an obvious lie. Her eyes said it all. But how could I hold her responsible when she was so smooth with it and made it impossible to find any evidence against her? It became apparent that she was willing to do whatever it took to win, even if it meant tearing me down. The rivalry had grown toxic. Ella's last-ditch effort to eliminate me was to hire someone to plant drugs in my car, hoping for my arrest. I had no idea, of course. I was on my way to where I'd be giving my campaign speech when the police pulled me over.
Drugs were found in your vehicle. Care to explain that?
I was arrested. Thankfully, the news didn't go round, and I didn't have to spend more than a night at the station because the man she hired to plant the drugs in my car decided to snitch on her. Apparently, Ella was too stingy to pay him completely. and called his threat to expose her a bluff. I was immediately released after he provided evidence of his claims. The scandal that followed was overwhelming. The news spread like wildfire, painting Ella and my parents in the worst light imaginable. Apparently, my parents and Ella had conspired to sabotage me. It didn't take long before they were arrested, handcuffed, and led away, leaving me to pick up the pieces of my campaign. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was stepping into the light, free from the shackles of my family's favoritism. With my parents and sister gone, I won the election for city council, a position I had long dreamed of. I made changes that resonated with the community and gave back in ways that truly mattered. 5 years passed, and I continued to grow in my political career. I became a respected voice in our town, advocating for change and earning the trust of the people. I even married a wonderful woman named Sarah, and together we welcomed 2 beautiful children into the world. Life was good, and I felt proud of what I had built. But then came the day when my parents and Ella were released from prison. I received a call from my mother.
James, we need your help. We've lost everything. We have no one to turn to now. Please help us.
You need my help now? Wow, you should have thought about that before you plotted against me. You don't deserve my help. I owe you nothing.
But we're family. Don't be ridiculous. You can't just turn your back on us.
That was the moment I realized that they still thought they had a right to my life and my success. I was furious. I remembered all the years of favoritism, manipulation, and betrayal. I built my life from the ground up while you tore each other down. You think I owe you something after everything you've done. You had your chance, and you threw it away. Deal with your problems yourself. I hung up the phone. I had thought it was over, but they had become increasingly desperate to reconnect with me, and it quickly morphed into an obsession. They began showing up uninvited at events I organized, lingering outside the doors, watching me like hawks. There was no doubt that they were stalking me. Their messages flooded my phone, apologies, pleas for forgiveness, and reminders of our shared blood. At first, I tried to ignore them, but their persistence was maddening. They left notes on my car, calling me ungrateful, demanding to know why I wouldn't just help them get back on their feet. Things escalated one fateful evening when my children and I were playing in the backyard. I spotted my father hiding near the edge of the trees. I immediately took my kids, rushed inside, and locked the door. I couldn't believe they had the audacity to show up at my home. The next day, I received a call from my mother.
James, if you don't help us, you'll regret it. We know where your children are, and we know where your wife works.
I was afraid for my wife and children's safety. I rushed to the police station to report the threats and immediately filed for a restraining order. However, my family broke the terms repeatedly, showing up at events, trying to get my attention. Their behavior became bolder and more reckless. They would stand outside my office waiting for me. They would run after my car, yelling at me. One night, I was alone in my living room when I began hearing noises. I checked from my window and saw my security guards beating up some people. I immediately went outside to check, only to see Ella and my parents. Apparently, they'd tried to break in my house, but my security guards caught them. The guards had mistook them for robbers and beat them up. I let them beat my parents and Ella until they could barely move before I called the police. The police arrived within minutes. I was so relieved as I watched them handcuff my parents and Ella, pushing and treating them like the criminal they were. They were dragged out of my building because they could barely walk. The next day, I was at the station to press charges. This time, they would face real consequences for their actions. Since the previous 5-year jail term wasn't enough to teach them a lesson, I hoped they would get a longer one. And of course, 1 month later, they each got 10 years imprisonment for their continuous harassment, breaking into my house, stalking me, and disobeying the terms in the restraining order. The news relieved me. It was hard to admit, but I enjoyed seeing them fall from grass to an even messier grass again. They had turned their lives into a mess, and I felt zero guilt for putting them in their places. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.